Expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. President Obama spoke to the nation last night about his decision to intervene in the ongoing civil war in Libya. His case was grounded in American values, but also the limits of military action. His answers were limited too. The president explained why he took action, but was less clear about the actions to come. To discuss the speech and the reaction to it, I'm joined by Roger Simon, chief political columnist for Politico, and our own Nancy Cordes, CBS News congressional correspondent. Before I turn to both of you, we're going to take a look at the president and what some people are calling the Obama doctrine.
There will be times, though, when our safety is not directly threatened, but our interests and our values are. Sometimes the course of history poses challenges that threaten our common humanity and our common security. Responding to natural disasters, for example, or preventing genocide and keeping the peace. Ensuring regional security and maintaining the flow of commerce. These may not be America's problems alone, but they are important to us. They're problems worth solving.
Roger, I want to ask you, this is the first speech we've seen on a military subject since 9/11 that didn't have to do with terrorism and al-Qaeda. What did you make of the speech?
It was a speech that emphasized values, as you said, but it was also a very tough, almost martial speech. I mean, he talked about striking tanks and wiping out armored personnel carriers, stuff like that. And clearly, strong military action is on his mind, but there's a danger with this doctrine. One is that I think President Obama clearly sees Libya as another Rwanda in the making. 1994, 1 million people killed in a civil war, mainly with knives and clubs. A no-fly zone wouldn't have worked against that. We would have had to send troops in to prevent it. President Clinton never did and always regretted it. But is every country that has a civil war truly a Rwanda in the making? The second difficulty is that if we are free, as the president seems to indicate, to militarily intervene in countries that violate our core principles, freedom of speech, assembly, and election, who's going to sell us oil? Almost all the countries in the Mideast that sell us oil are run by dictators or monarchs, which are dictators who have thrones, and they don't allow any of this stuff. So it's a very far-reaching doctrine, but I really wonder if we have fully thought out the implications of it.
Nancy, I want to get your sense of the reaction up there. One of the audiences, of course, was the president's critics on the Hill. How was it received?
Well, if there's a Republican who received it well, John, I haven't spoken to them yet. Speaker Boehner leading the charge, saying it's still not clear after this speech what the goals are in Libya and what would define success, what would enable us to wrap up the mission. And there are a number of other critiques from Republicans as well, running the gamut from saying that it's too little too late, that he should have had this speech 9 days ago, that this war is already costing too much, or on the other hand, that if we're going to be involved, that we shouldn't be pulling back now and letting other countries take the lead, that the United States should be leading any mission that it's involved in.
Roger, there was something we've learned about this president is that he likes to sort of come out after the thing has happened and explain to us his thinking, and was able to say, as he did several times last night, he didn't say mission accomplished, but he said, you know, I delivered on my promise. This was going to be limited, and it is, and America stayed with its word. Give me your sense of whether, as Nancy mentioned, this was a mistake to come out late, or whether this is just a different way of operating that we've learned about this president.
I think the president is very conscious of preserving the powers of the presidency. He doesn't believe, as no president since Franklin Roosevelt has believed, that Congress is necessary to declare war. It simply is irrelevant now. Congress funds wars, doesn't declare them. I think Obama's feelings are, if you give it to Congress, it's going to be like the health care plan. you know, we're not going to argue for months about whether to put up a no-fly zone over Libya. He believes in immediate action. He's going to take it. I think he's going to explain it later. Could that be a problem for him in the future? Yeah.
Nancy, the explain it later is not something I like up on the Hill. The president said he consulted with Congress, but they're pretty angry that he didn't actually ask their opinion about the actual strike. What do you know about the extent that the administration is going to improve the dialogue between the president, or at least administration officials, and leaders on the Hill?
Well, now that Congress is back in session, because keep in mind they weren't even here last week, any consultation that they did was over phone lines and teleconferencing. Now that Congress is back, they are sending Secretary of State Clinton up here to the Hill tomorrow. She'll be briefing members of the House and Senate on where things stand on Libya right now. But I don't know that any number of briefings by members of the administration at this point are going to do anything to assuage Republicans who say we shouldn't be told now, we should have been consulted more in depth before any of this happened.
Roger, I want to ask you a political question. The president's speech was backward-looking. He explained his thinking and the American values that was behind that thinking, but it was a little gauzy about the future, how long the military is going to be there, how much it will be involved, and what the end game looks like, to use one of our favorite cliches of the moment. Give me your sense of the politics of this for this president. The peril, we obviously were involved already in 2 wars.
The only question politically for President Obama for everything he does is, does it hurt 2012 or does it help 2012? Not that he's not acting out of good conscience to save the lives of people. I think he genuinely believes that, and I think he is accomplishing that. But I think the image he does not want is the image he sometimes has had of the overthinking, overtly intellectual, Obambi president who dithers before he acts. That was the old Obama. The new Obama is a president of action, and I think I have heard nothing from any of the potential Republican candidates in 2012 that has really effectively attacked that image.
You mentioned president of action. As you said, there was a lot of, I ordered this, I sent ships to the Mediterranean, I did this, that, and the other. And he also made a stand for a different kind of leadership, too. He said, you know, real leadership, it means putting together a coalition, not going it alone. And he mentioned in that context Iraq. So it seemed like he was making a kind of, as you pointed out, a Marshall case, but also for this kind of forward-leaning kind of diplomacy.
It is, but the fact remains that none of our European allies are going to go it alone without the United States acting, and perhaps without the United States acting first. They're just not going to do it. Questions have been raised in the past. Why doesn't the Arab League take care of this? There is an African military strike force formed, I believe, after Rwanda that was designed to take care of African problems. These are basically non-functional bodies when it comes to actually putting people at risk. And for all the support of the Arab League, which has run hot and cold, they are not eager to kill fellow Muslims. And it does not really help our image with Muslims to engage in 3 simultaneous wars in the Mideast, especially after, in his Cairo speech, the president seemed to be reaching out so effectively to the Muslim world.
Nancy, let me ask you a final question on this political front. The Hill, there's been a lot of upset about consultation and so forth, but do Republican leaders see this as something that they can get some mileage out of, or are they turning back to the big issue, which is how to fund the government, which still only has a tiny bit of time before we're back at one of those crisis moments?
To be honest, I think it's kind of an easy target, this Libya situation. I mean, it's sort of a something that the Republicans can do pretty easily, is to say that no matter what the president did in Libya, it was not the right thing. That's something that's pretty typical, especially of an election year. But they are primarily focused on the budget now. And what we heard today for the first time was Democratic leaders saying that they have actually come quite far in these negotiations. They now say that they are prepared to make $51 billion in cuts to what they say are Republican leaders' $72 billion in cuts. Now, this is something we haven't heard before, and Republican leaders haven't told us this. This is just coming from Democrats. If you listen to the Republicans talk about it, they say Democrats have been completely absent from the negotiating table and that the president has been AWOL as well in their terms. So it's not really clear where exactly negotiations stand right now. What is clear is that they only have about 10 days to complete those negotiations. Otherwise, we're looking at the possibility of either a government shutdown or the fact that Congress will have to pass yet another short-term funding bill just to keep this government running.
It's when you hear people talk about the president being AWOL, it's just what we were talking about with Roger, the idea that the president kind of comes in at the end after everything's been worked on. But there's no hint that he's ready to come on stage at all.
Well, actually, what the White House said this weekend was that they have come forward with their own package of about $20 billion in cuts. And Democrats say that that has been quite helpful. Now, what's in those cuts, we don't know. Even House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, who told us about it this morning, said he doesn't know. All they're willing to tell us right now is that they've got a package of about $51 billion in cuts that they're willing to make, that Republicans supposedly have the $72 billion in cuts, but that Republicans, as they say it, aren't able to come down any further because there are Tea Party members of their own caucus who are standing firm, putting Republican leaders' feet to the fire and saying you absolutely may not go any lower than this.
All right, well, we'll have to see how that all plays out. Nancy Cordes from the Hill, thanks so much. Roger Simon, thanks for joining us. And thanks all of you for joining us. I'm John Dickerson. Thanks for watching.
Expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.